For the band Dream Theater, finding out that they may have fans with I&W was an incredible feeling, I bet. But as it seems to always go, and no pun intended, on Awake, they got their wake-up call. Turns out the music industry is complicated and messy. Awake did not go as planned, and it quickly created tension. A change of season was here, and they needed a miracle part 2 or faced a real possibility of falling into the void of infinity forever. Kevin Moore, their keyboardist, had just left the band, and it came with a tough decision. Do they continue without a keyboardist or find a replacement? Their label was demanding more simplicity, radio-friendly hits, and most importantly, numbers. Fans were also pressing the band for Metropolis Part 2. Funny how the smallest of details can have the most effect. Remember, Part 1 was added to the song as a joke, yet no laughter, only pressure. Were they willing to play ball or just call it in and throw in a towel? We're about to find out. On the impossible truth about Dream Theater, Part 5, Falling Sand by GRAFIKMETAL, an original career documentary about the band as they celebrate their 40th anniversary. Along the way, we will showcase all of their albums, the deeper meaning on the album covers, plus we're going to reimagine them all front and back. And we even turned this series into a game for you to play and a chance to win all the new designs and merch. GRAFIKMETAL is sponsored by the Organization of Open-Mindedness, NTBTSP, not to be taken seriously or personal, and Blue Snoopy, cause why not? Life is supposed to be fun. Given the stream of consciousness that we are about to take through the lens of one Dream Theater, this is a perfect time for audience participation, as there's a reason why music is the universal language after all. It binds us to our soul deep, hard. It connects us directly with our human consciousness. And what is more powerful than being a human being on this planet we call Earth, or to some Terra, than the ability we have to generate and reflect on memories. And that's what I want all of you to do. Take a moment, close your eyes, and go deep into the well of your memory bank and pluck out 1, 2, or as many as you like in association with the band Dream Theater. And I want you to share them in the comments to this episode. Now, please respect everyone's stories, their comments. We all come from different places with different viewpoints. Respect that, please. Now, if you're looking for my take, my shared memories of the band, and stay tuned. Now, if this series were a book, we would be walking over to the bookshelf, taking down and dusting off the jacket on the book number 2 in the impossible truth about Dream Theater. So let's open it now. With this stress, decisions to make, and changes in direction, the band needed to buy themselves some time. Enter a change of seasons. Like literally, the song they had been trying to get released now for several years. This 23-minute epic song, which was written by Mike about the cycle of life, and specifically him reflecting on the passing of his mother. Which, side note, if you flip over and look at the back cover of the jacket, is the visual reference as she died, unfortunately, on November 16th. The song also includes samples from the 1989 film Dead Poets Society, as well as quotes from the 1648 Robert Herrick poem to the virgins to make much of time. You see the connection there. The song was written and intended to be released on Images and Words, and then reattempted and planned for Awake, but the label refused both times, citing that the albums would be simply way too long. An agreement was made, though. The band could release the song so long as it was only that song, and they would add songs of them playing what was described as cover medley mashups, something that drew the label to the band and was being pushed for release as they felt it captured the energy, the creativity, and inspiration of the band. Plus, they thought it would make the band more relatable and cast a larger net to attract more fans. The band agreed, but under one key condition. They didn't want it to be seen or identified as an album, because to them it was, well, not. So, hence the decision to label as an EP and released on September 19th, 1995. Those cover-up medleys, which included covers of Elton John, Deep Purple, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Queen, Kansas, Genesis, and more, were recorded during a fan club show in London at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club on January 31st, 1995, which was also the first time everyone got to hear the brand new keyboardist, Derek Sherinian. Okay, how about Derek Sherinian for you pronunciation nerds? Born in Laguna Beach, California on August 25th, 1966, of Greek and Armenian descent, he began piano lessons at age 5 and also received a scholarship at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, where he flew out across the country to attend. Among the people he met were Will Calhoun, future drummer of Living Colour, and Al Pitrelli, future Alice Cooper, Megadeth, Sabotage, and Trans-Siberian Orchestra guitarist and musical director. Derek and Al were even, dorm mates, which is pretty cool to think about. Which fast forward a few years later, where Derek had just wrapped up work with Kiss and Alice Cooper for the album The Last Temptation, which saw Alice taking a break after completing his contract with Sony. With no upcoming work, it was friend and drummer of Alice Cooper's band, Jonathan Mover, who told him that the band Dream Theater was auditioning for a new keyboardist. So Derek called up their management team and booked a slot. He was auditioned, and DT decided to choose him.
We began the Awake tour with Derek Sherinian filling in as a hired gun on keyboards. And I guess about 6 months into the tour, we finally decided that Derek was what we were looking for, and he joined the band full-time.
As they were drawn to his unique guitar-like approach to keyboard playing, and seemed extremely knowledgeable, plus, and most importantly, had confidence playing for some already great big bands. Derek, in interviews, has said that entering into the world of DT, though, was not as he expected, and admitted feeling quite overwhelmed by the type of music being asked of him, given the technical range and depth to the style of music that they played. Moving onward, this leads to the band's official fourth studio album and true follow-up to Awake, and also has always been the most divisive in their catalog. Falling into Infinity, released almost to the day 2 years after a change of seasons, on September 23rd, 1997. Although there has always been conflicting thoughts on just how much influence the label had, what we do know is Mike struggled with the constant feedback from them the most. And if the band did have it their way, once again, as with the past two albums, this thing would have been epic. As in, it was intended to be a double album concept with a fully engaging narrative and unified theme that connected the entire thing to be interpreted as one continuous song. Some of the particular differences from the intended version versus the final cut that we are aware of is Raise the Knife was a song that got cut and was intended to be the opener to the album. Cover My Eyes, another song got cut, was intended to be a single. Metropolis Part 2 was to make its appearance. There is the 21 minute and 21 second instrumental demo of it, which by the way is in fascinating length and of duration, which we don't know would have necessarily been the final version, but we do know that the sequel that fans were pressing for would have been on it. The other potential songs that were cut were Where Are You Now, The Way It Used to Be, and Speak to Me, which the last being the only one in demo form that was released on the original cut of the Japanese bonus edition. And then there is the intended epic song that got split up and released as separate songs on the final cut, that being Lines in the Sand, which was to include that song, plus Hell's Kitchen and Anna Lee, or at least an instrumental segment of it. The lyrics and, it turning into a song came later. Again, this thing would have been epic in length at a possible 2.5 hours. In any case, and for whatever reasons, despite the changes being made to the final cut version, and it including a number of songs that easily could have been huge hits like Howl Years, You Not Me, Take Away My Pain, Anna Lee, or Peruvian Skies, which all of them could have easily have also had single cut versions. Not to mention that the album cover actually getting a true treatment from one of the absolute best cover artists of all time in legendary Storm Thorgerson, aka Hypnosis. This album should have done really well, or at bare minimum done at least as well as I&W, or for God's sakes at least Awake, but unfortunately it did not. Not only did it fail to sell, in fact only half of what even Awake did, the critics and fans also hated it, and hell, there's also the possibility even the band themselves didn't even like it. So this turned into quite the fiasco, at least at the time of its release, that is. Audience participation again. What were or are your thoughts, stories, ideas regarding Falling into Infinity? Add your comments. Let's unpack the artwork. Sure, it's great. It's freaking Storm after all. But let's get real. Those hoping and searching for a deeper meaning will be let down. Unfortunately, it's just leftover work that he had done that was intended for Pink Floyd. It's just coincidence that when they were looking through his portfolio, this one popped up and it just felt absolutely perfect with the album title and general theme of the album. But there are a few things to make note of, as naturally a blind man can tell you how different it is from the rest of their catalog. This is what happens, after all, when you work with a seasoned legend. They dictate. Usually for the right reasons, but I always say this is why the best bands often are the ones fortunate enough to have always worked with just one, yet same designer their entire career, or most of their career. Hello, King Gizzard and Jason, Opeth and Travis, or of course Storm and himself and Floyd. But not all designers are, well, that good, so it's easier said than done. Storm, in any case, has rules. Of them is that he won't approve anything that isn't 100% his or his vision. Hence the band logo being entirely custom and different from the DT logo we have come to always know of the band. Even the Majesty symbol, which the band requires to be on every cover, Storm said, okay, but my way, aka it's almost completely unseen. It's also interesting that the cassette tape version has two different people looking at each other. Pretty nifty for those rare folks like myself who had both. I actually personally prefer the cassette version. From a design perspective, whereas I understand the decision to make, the image as large as possible in the canvas, I like how on the cassette you have more negative black space, not only because it allows the logo, title, and Majesty symbol to breathe, but I also love how because of the cropping and the extra negative space from the bottom, it always to me felt like you could literally imagine and put yourself into the art as if you were the one literally holding the binoculars. Something you just don't feel or get with the other version. What can I say? I like those extra little details. And it always bothered me how difficult it was to read the album title, which isn't just the case with the other one. As far as any other fun, deeper meaning, well, I'll let your imagination run wild. I know mine does with all of Storm's art. He is, after all, an absolute master at letting the art speak for itself. More audience participation. What is your interpretation that you've always had regarding the art for falling into infinity? Comments below. Okay, now for your favorite part. Don't kill yourself. It's the graphic metal reimagination. Got 2 of them this time around, because I had the first one for the longest time. I like it. But then I stumbled across another idea that I really wanted to explore, and I really love the concept from a deeper level. So for the first one, and again, keep in mind, remember, this one's unusual. So Falling into Infinity, they use art from Storm, right? So it's already far out there, abstract and trippy. So this time around, and I knew that I wasn't going to make any of the other covers in the series literal. So I was like, this time around, I want to make it a little bit more literal-ish. But naturally, when I started to work on it, I got fixated on more abstract ideas of the art of falling. But reluctantly, I stayed to stick to my guns, just as they were having to, be a little bit simpler. I was like, all right, I'll capture myself falling, or at least attempting to. I thought, okay, well, the simplest, fastest way of doing that would be to, fake it a little bit. So at first I used a laundry basket, and I broke it. So then I, decided on something sturdier, and found a small coffee table. So this way I could bend myself into position and, explore the different, different positions at different angles to kind of capture this feeling. And I knew I could, edit the heck out of it if I needed to manipulate it more to really drastically exaggerate the movement and the feeling of the fall. And so then I knew, remember, I wanted to have the unsettling feeling that of the polar opposite feelings of equal parts anxious and nervous and fearful, but then also open-mindedness and curiosity. So I decided, okay, well, let's use my hands. So in one case, I'm drawing a fist for the fear, and then the open-mindedness with a palm, open palm, and use that, and then to, it's me, I had to have something off-putting, right? And I wanted to create that unsettling feeling. So I would take my arms, right, and then cut them up and then twist them upside down, flip them. So this way, something, when you're looking at it, something just doesn't feel right. And then to capture even more of an unsettling feeling, I was like, all right, well, it should be void, empty practically. So I like the idea of just having an empty background and just, the figure. And I decided to put the figure, then I want to have it below, down. So this way that, the gravity pulling it down. And then have as much, negative white space as possible. And since, currently I'm keeping, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have the band name and the title even on there, but compromise, and for consistency purposes, having it in the upper right, okay, fine, it's not too disruptive. But then in doing so, have the subject in the bottom left corner for as much distance as possible. I initially liked the idea of having, the consistency of their color scheme, right? Been doing that if possible. But bringing in the blue just wasn't feeling right. I really liked the idea of the black and white and just empty white background, because it really adds, it fuels even more of that anxiousness, the uncomfortability, that void, the distance. And so there we go. And then the back cover, that one was easier. I knew I wanted to do a spiral of some sort, or circular. In fact, I wanted to use circular text. Again, the change of something different is cool, fun. And then it was just a matter of, okay, well, what would I use? And so then I, decided, okay, well, let's, capture some rocks and then just piece together them and then make them in a circular spiral. At first, it was a spiral, both the text and the rocks. But then I was actually preferring just the circular. It was more like an echo pulse. I preferred that a little bit better than the actual spiral. So that was the first version. working on this one. I was taking a journey in a park, and I came across this. It was completely different, each one, because again, this kind of goes with the prog, lifestyle, the music journey of the pursuit of, a wandering journey through the art of music. So the same thing with the art and design, I wanted to do the same thing. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, if you imagine this flower petal is falling from its home, its family, its nested roots, where it's of life, it's flourishing and prosperously growing to be beautiful, and then it's severed from its source of life, and it falls to infinity. And then I got to thinking even further, and it's like, well, this is also interesting background. Just a gravel road, because again, it connects like the complete opposite. Right, when you think of life of a plant, nature. Well, an example of the opposite is concrete, right? The, concrete life of, the nature versus concrete, right? Whenever I visit places like New York, that's immediately what, I think of as the complete polar opposites, right? Pretty badass and worth exploring, don't you think? So let's see how it looks. I have a feeling that this could work, and I like it. I'm digging this. I'm very curious what you think. All right, moving onward to the journey of life, aka a walk. Okay, back to the band. Like we said, they fell hard. Falling into Infinity failed to chart album or single-wise, and sold half of what Awake did. The label was uncertain if they wanted to continue with them. And worst of all, they were unhappy with the finished product, feeling like they had to significantly compromise on their grand vision. And even fans didn't get what they wanted, a Metropolis Part 2 song, which the band planned to give them as part of the track list, but was cut by the label. Complicating things further was the stress felt by the label itself. EastWest had now been under Elektra, which occurred once Sylvia Rohn, who had run EastWest division under Atlantic, took over after Bob Krasnow left. The label was already struggling in the mid-90s with some poor decisions and trying to adapt to the rapid change in musical climate, not to mention being sued by their biggest act in Metallica, who was pissed as they still were under the same initial contract established in '83 and being paid peanuts, despite becoming their most lucrative act, and Rohn wouldn't honor their new deal Krasnow had given them right before he had left. But we will save that for another day. The point is, would the label give them another chance and continue to honor their 7-album deal, or would they just sever the cord? Money was tight after all, and even if they did, where would they go from here? Tension was high. Two things were certain. One, they would have hit that like button and subscribed. And two, if both agreed to continue, this surely would be the band's last-ditch effort, or their career would probably be over. Find out on Part 6, Strange Eternity of the Impossible Truth About Dream Theater by Graphic Metal.